Today I'm going to show you how to work a German short row heel. So this is my Most Ardently sock in the taupe version, and so this one has a German short row heel. This heel is quite a comfortable heel, and it's really simple to work. So I'm going to show you how to do it now. So one of the first things we're going to need is 2 markers, and we need to have worked our taupe sock until it's at the point where it is the centimetres stated in the pattern short of your foot. So the size that I'm doing, mine needs to be 4 centimetres short, which means my heel will be 4 centimetres long, and that will fit my foot perfectly. So you should have worked that section, and then we go to the heel. So with a German short row heel, it will depend on what size you're working, will depend on how many stitches you knit to have the centre placement. So you should have that written in your pattern. You should have a knit a certain amount, then place a marker, knit another certain amount, then place a marker. There might be the same number. On the one that I'm working, it's 10, 10 and 10 because I've got 30 stitches on the back, but different ones could be 11, 12, 11, things like that. It's usually the same on either side and a different number in the middle if it's that case. That's just so you have this central section around the heel that doesn't get worked, which is like the heel turn on a heel flap and gusset. So on mine, I'm going to knit 10 and place a marker, and then knit another 10 and place a marker. So we just knit across the same way as you would, but we're obviously only working on the back this time now. We're not working in the round anymore. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And pop a marker in there, knit another 10. That's for my size. You follow the instructions for your size in the pattern. Two, 4, 6, 8, 10. Place another marker and knit to end, which for me is another 10. Okay, so we're going to turn our work, and on the wrong side, this first stitch here is going to be your first German short row, so your first wrap. So to do that, we've already worked it, we've knitted it, so now we need to slip it across with the yarn in front. So we slip it purlwise across, and once it's on the right hand needle, we're going to pull this yarn and bring it over the top of the needle. So this is your yarn that's in front. We're going to pull it over the top, and it will create, you're going to pull up the bottom stitch. So we're going to create these 2, so it looks like 2 stitches. And then we're on a purl side, so we're going to bring that around and bring it back into front and pull it quite tightly. And then the next step of the pattern is to just purl to the end, slip in all the markers. So with that wrapped stitch, we're now going to keep hold of it tightly and just purl to the end. So make sure that stitch next to it is knitted quite tight. And that's your first wrap stitch done. And we knit all the way to the end, and then we turn the work, and we're going to wrap this stitch. So this is a wrap on the right side. So we're going to work this stitch. We've already purled it on the opposite side, which we need to do. So we're going to slip this. We need the yarn to be in the front. So we're going to bring the yarn forward, slip this onto the right hand needle, and then the same again, we're going to pull that up. Oops. so you get in this double stitch again. Now we are going to work a knit row. We're going to knit to the last double stitch. So because of that, we've got this double stitch. We need to leave the yarn in the back. So pull it up and get you ready for the next stitch and just knit into that stitch and make sure that's pulled enough to give you a double stitch. And then we're going to knit to the end. Okay, so we're one stitch before the double stitch, which is where we need to be. So we knit that stitch and then we're going to turn our work. We leave that one alone. So we're going to turn our work and we're going to work another double stitch. So we slip it across with the yarn in the front, slip it across, pull that over, causing a double stitch, and we're purling this time, so we bring it around. And then we start purling back, keep that quite tight. So you've got two double stitches next to each other now. And we purl to the next double stitch. Okay, so our last double stitch is there. We're going to purl this one before it and we'll leave that on the needle. Turn the work, bring your yarn in the front and then slip the stitch and pull that across, so you get in this double stitch. You see, they're harder to see on the right side, but they are there. Okay, so pull it up and then knit back across to your last double stitch worked at the other end. And we're going to continue doing this until all the stitches on the outside of the markers are double stitches. So you can see there's two there. There's a double stitch and there's a double stitch. So you can see those. We want all of these to be double stitches and all of these to be double stitches. These are the only ones that won't be worked apart from when you're knitting backwards and forwards. So we're not going to change these into double stitches. So I'm going to speed this along and come back when these are all worked up. Okay, so you will get to a point where you have one stitch at either side of the markers. So we're going to work across. So I've got one stitch left here. All the rest are double stitches, as you can see. We're going to turn this one into a double stitch. And then the same as before, we're just going to slip the marker and purl straight across to the other stitch on the other side of the marker. So we have the one stitch here, all the rest are doubles. So we purl that. Now that is the end of the instruction for most German short row heels, but you do have to remember to flip this one. You've got to make that into a double stitch. And then we are into the centre. So straight away we're going to collect all of these on our first pass. So make that into a double stitch, that last one on this side, and then continue knitting across your centre. And then once you get to the marker, we're going to knit them all the double stitches together. So you just basically knit them together as you go. They're not even like a knit two together. It's kind of, it feels like one stitch under there. You just need to make sure to pick it up properly. Now, when we get to the end, there's a little fiddly bit that we need to do, but it will stop a hole from forming here. So we need to collect this stitch from the corner of the instep and wrap and turn it. So to do that, we need to move the instep stitches onto the needle as if we're going to keep going in the round, but we're not. Bring your yarn in front, collect that stitch, wrap the yarn around it, and put the stitch back. And then we're going to go back to the heel stitches. So it is a bit fiddly to swap your needles about when you're doing magic loop, but it's worth it because you won't get a hole. So we're on the wrong side. We have wrapped that stitch and we're going to just give that a tug and purl across. So make sure you tug that tight close to the first stitch. So you've wrapped that one on your instep. So you're just sealing up this section, and then we're going to purl across to the other marker. Okay, so we're going to slip the marker, purl across the middle section. So once you get to the next marker, we're going to knit purl all these double stitches together. So just the same as you did before. They're a little bit trickier with the purl. My yarn is a little bit fluffy, so they're a little bit harder to see as well. But these ones are a little bit trickier to pick up. So just make sure you're picking up both of the stitches to purl them together. One, and then the same again. So we want to wrap and turn this instep stitch. So again, we're going to get our instep stitches onto the working needle, and tangled up. Bring your yarn in front, grab that instep stitch, put the yarn behind it and put it back on there. So you're wrapping the yarn around the instep stitch. Put it back into the instep and then get your heel back on the working needle. Okay, so now we're going, so we've got the bottom of the heel done. So it's a bit hard to see it properly because it's all bunched up on one needle, but it is sorted. So now we're going to do the top half of the heel, which is the bit that goes up your ankle. And so we're going to make sure that's tight for your wrap and turn section. So it's wrapped around that stitch there. We're going to pull that right across and start knitting. We're going to knit to the marker. And we're going to slip our marker and knit across the heel turn section, the centre. So once we get to this next marker, we're going to remove that marker. We're not going to need it. And we're going to knit one stitch, and then we're going to turn. And we're going to turn that stitch into a double wrap stitch. So these sides are really easy. So just straight over the back and turn it into a wrap stitch. Bring it around and then purl back to the other marker. And once we're at the other marker, we do not need that anymore. So we remove that and we're going to purl one stitch and turn work. So we're going to now turn this into a wrap stitch. So pull it straight across. We need the yarn left and back because we're going to knit. Now we're going to knit to that wrap stitch that we've just done. And here it is. And we're going to work it straight away. Work that wrap stitch, then we're going to knit one and turn work. And that's our next wrap stitch. So we're going to bring that across, turn it into a double wrap stitch, and then purl to the last wrap stitch you did. And here it is. So we're going to purl that together and purl one, turn work, and again we're going to turn that into a wrap stitch. Bring that around and just start purling, knitting back, making sure that's nice and tight. And once we get to the wrap stitch, we knit that together, knit one, and turn your work and make that one into your next wrap stitch. And that's how we continue until all of the stitches on each end are worked. So we keep working to the last wrap stitch we did, then working the wrap stitch, so purling it together or knitting it together, and then work the next stitch and turn your work, and then turn that stitch you've just worked into a wrap stitch. So you're just moving across one every time you go, and eventually you'll have worked all of these across. So I'll come back when I get to the end. Okay, so I have one stitch left on either side. This one on this side. So we're going to get to those. Alright, so we're going to work that stitch, work the double stitch, we knit the last one, and then we're going to turn it into a wrap stitch. Okay, and then purl to the other last stitch to the other side. One. So we're going to turn this one into the wrap stitch. Oops. And knit to end where you'll have a wrap stitch. When we get to the end of this row, we're now joining back in the round. So we're going to knit that double stitch together, and then we're bringing the instep in now. So if you're on a different pattern to the Most Ardently, this section will obviously be slightly different, but we're going to work your wrap stitch together. For a Most Ardently, it would be knitted through the back loop. So you're going to work those, pull that nice and tight, and work your stitch pattern across your instep, whatever that may be. When you get to the end of the instep, you'll have the one stitch left that's wrapped. The best way to do it is to just leave the stitch on the left hand needle and pick up that wrap from behind the stitch, pop it onto the needle, and then just work those 2 stitches together. And then we come to the heel again. We're going to get the heel back on the working needle, and you'll have a double stitch at the end. So we're going to knit that together. See that double stitch there? Knit that together. That's your last double stitch for the heel. Pull that nice and tight across, and then we're going to knit to the end of this needle. And there we go. So in the Most Ardently sock, that would now be your new start of round here. But that is it. Whether you're working that pattern or a different one for a German short row, that is your heel done. Sorry, my needles are trailing. So there's all your short rows going down one side and down the other, and you shouldn't have any holes in between. I mean, there could be a tiny one. There's a little one there, so you could stitch that up. This side doesn't have one, so I've done a better job on that side. But there you go. That is your German short row heel. And now you would start working in the round again for your leg and cuff section. Thank you for watching.